Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Storyverse Legends. On my channel, the video I upload doesn't contain any AI content, any robotics or any fake voices. So, without any wasting of time, let's go to the video.
Jason Walker had a reputation at Westbridge Community College, and it wasn't a good one. Professors knew him as the student who always seemed lost. Classmates joked that he could turn an easy quiz into a disaster. His grades were terrible. His attendance wasn't much better. And after 2 years of struggling, most people had already decided how his story would end: failure. On a rainy Monday morning, Jason sat alone in the student cafeteria, staring at an email on his phone. Academic warning. The message explained that if his grades didn't improve this semester, he would be suspended from college. Jason sighed and dropped the phone onto the table. Across the room, students discussed internships, graduate schools, and future careers. Jason couldn't even pass introductory physics. Rough morning. Jason looked up. His roommate, Derek Simmons, slid into the seat across from him. You could say that. Derek glanced at the phone screen. Ouch. Yeah. What are you going to do? Jason shrugged. I honestly don't know. For the first time in his life, he felt completely stuck. Later that afternoon, Jason met with Dean Harrison. The dean's office overlooked the center of campus. Students hurried across sidewalks below while rain tapped against the windows. Dean Harrison adjusted his glasses. Jason, your academic record concerns me. Jason nodded. It concerns me too. The dean opened a folder. There may be one opportunity left. Jason sat forward. What kind of opportunity? The dean handed him a course registration form. The title immediately caught his attention: Advanced Universal Logic. Jason frowned. I've never heard of this class. Neither has anyone else. What do you mean? It was added 3 days ago. Jason studied the form. No textbook, no exams, no listed department. And the instructor's name was one he had never seen before. Professor Xyron Vex, is he new? The dean hesitated. Very new. Something about the answer felt strange, but Jason needed credits. Without them, his college career was over. I'll take it. The following day, Jason arrived at the classroom. The building itself felt unusual. Unlike the modern campus structures, this one was old, really old. Dark stone walls surrounded a circular room with no windows. Only 8 students sat inside. Everyone seemed confused. Then the door opened. Silence instantly filled the room. A tall man stepped inside. He wore a dark suit and carried nothing. No books, no laptop, no papers. His silver-gray eyes scanned the room. My name is Professor Xyron Vex. His voice was calm and confident. I will teach you how reality truly works. Several students exchanged puzzled looks. Jason nearly laughed. Reality. What kind of class was this? Professor Vex walked to the center of the room. Most educational systems teach memorization. He paused. I teach understanding. For some reason, Jason found himself listening carefully. More carefully than he had listened to any professor before. Then Professor Vex looked directly at him, not at the class, at him. A faint smile appeared on the professor's face. Mr. Walker. Jason blinked. Yes. The professor folded his hands behind his back. You're not failing because you're incapable. The room became completely silent. Jason felt every student turn toward him. Professor Vex continued. You are failing because nobody has taught you the language your mind was designed to understand. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Nobody had ever said anything like that before, and somehow ... Professor Vex sounded absolutely certain. The professor smiled again. That is about to change.
Jason Walker couldn't stop thinking about Professor Vex's words. Nobody has taught you the language your mind was designed to understand. The sentence echoed in his head throughout the evening. For years, every teacher had told him what was wrong with him. They called him distracted, unfocused, or lazy. Professor Vex was the first person who suggested something different. Maybe Jason wasn't broken. Maybe he simply saw the world differently. The idea kept him awake most of the night. The next afternoon, he arrived at Advanced Universal Logic nearly 30 minutes early. The old stone classroom was empty. At first, everything seemed normal. Then he noticed something strange. The symbols carved into the walls looked different. Jason walked closer. He was sure the markings had changed since yesterday. Lines curved in new directions. Shapes appeared where none had existed before. It was impossible. Stone carvings couldn't move, yet somehow these had. He rubbed his eyes. The symbols remained exactly where they were. Interesting. The voice behind him nearly made him jump. Professor Vex stood near the doorway. Jason hadn't even heard him enter. "The walls change," Jason said. Most professors would have laughed. Professor Vex didn't. Instead, he looked at the symbols thoughtfully. "What exactly did you notice?" Jason pointed at several markings. "Those weren't connected yesterday." The professor's silver eyes narrowed. "And how do you know that?" Jason hesitated. "I don't know." The answer sounded ridiculous, yet it was true. He simply knew. For a moment, Professor Vex looked almost impressed. "Very good, Mr. Walker," Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're beginning to see." Before Jason could ask what that meant, other students started arriving. Class began moments later. Unlike a normal lecture, Professor Vex didn't use textbooks. He didn't write notes. He didn't assign homework. Instead, he asked questions. Questions that seemed impossible. If time could move in more than one direction, he asked, how would memory work? The class stared blankly. Nobody answered. Except Jason. Without understanding why, ideas began forming inside his mind. Maybe memory wouldn't be limited to the past. Professor Vex smiled. Continue. Jason sat up straighter. If time moves both ways, memories could come from the future too. Several students laughed. Professor Vex did not. Incredible. The room fell silent. Jason blinked. Incredible? The professor nodded. That concept took human physicists centuries to consider. Jason wasn't sure whether to feel proud or concerned. After class, he headed to the library. For the first time all semester, he actually wanted to study. As he walked between rows of bookshelves, he noticed a strange sensation, a faint buzzing in the back of his mind. Almost like a distant signal, the feeling grew stronger. Without realizing it, Jason followed it, past the science section, past the history shelves, all the way to an old corner of the library that almost nobody visited. There, hidden behind a stack of outdated astronomy books, he found something. A small metal panel built into the wall. Jason stared. He had been coming to this library for 2 years. He had never seen it before. The panel had no handle, no lock. Only one symbol engraved in its center. The exact same symbol he had seen in Professor Vex's classroom. His heart began racing. Slowly he reached toward it. The moment his fingers touched the symbol, the panel lit up. Blue light spread across its surface. A mechanical voice echoed softly. Identity scan initiated. Jason stumbled backward. What? The voice continued. Searching database. His pulse thundered in his ears. The library around him seemed suddenly quieter, almost too quiet. Then the voice spoke again. And this time, it sent a chill down his spine. Genetic match detected. The panel opened. Inside was a small glowing object no larger than a baseball. And attached to it was a message. A message that had apparently been waiting years for someone to find it. Specifically him. The message contained only 4 words. Welcome back, Commander Walker. Jason Walker stared at the glowing sphere resting inside the hidden compartment. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it. The message beneath the sphere remained unchanged. Welcome back, Commander Walker. For several seconds, he couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Commander Walker? There had to be some mistake. Jason was a struggling college student who could barely pass his classes. He wasn't a commander. He wasn't even captain of a debate team. Slowly, he reached into the compartment and picked up the sphere. The instant his fingers touched it, the blue light intensified. A pulse of energy shot through his hand. Jason gasped. The library vanished. Suddenly, he was somewhere else. Stars stretched across a giant viewing window. Dozens of people rushed through a futuristic command center. Massive holographic displays floated in the air. Alien symbols flashed across transparent screens. Jason looked around in shock. It felt completely real. Too real to be a dream. Then he noticed something strange. Nobody seemed to see him. People walked past him without reacting, as if he wasn't there. A memory. Somehow he was inside a memory. At the center of the room stood a man wearing silver armor. Tall, confident, respected. Everyone seemed to follow his orders. Jason's stomach tightened. The man looked exactly like him. Not similar, identical. The same face, the same eyes, the same features. Only older, stronger. The name suddenly echoed through the command center. Commander Walker. Jason froze. The armored man turned toward a holographic map. A galaxy filled the room. Hundreds of star systems glowed across it. Then red warning symbols appeared, one after another. An officer rushed forward. Commander, enemy fleets have entered Alliance space. The room fell silent. The commander stared at the map. For a moment, Jason felt something impossible. The man's emotions, fear, responsibility, determination. It was as though they were somehow connected. Then the commander spoke. "The war has begun." The vision shattered. Jason stumbled backward. He found himself standing in the library once again. The sphere remained in his hand. Still glowing, still warm. His breathing was uneven. Nothing about what he had seen made sense, yet somehow he knew it had been real. Not imagination, not fantasy, a memory. But whose memory? And why had it shown him that? Before he could think further, a voice interrupted him. "Jason." He spun around. Professor Vex stood at the end of the aisle. His expression was unusually serious. Jason nearly dropped the sphere. "Professor!" Professor Vex walked quickly toward him. When he saw the device, his face changed. For the first time, Jason saw genuine shock. "Where did you find that?" Jason pointed toward the hidden compartment. "It opened when I touched the symbol." Professor Vex stared at the sphere. Then he sighed. "I was afraid of this." Jason frowned. "Afraid of what?" The professor looked around carefully, almost as if checking whether anyone was watching. "Not here?" "What do you mean?" "We need to leave. Immediately." The urgency in his voice sent a chill through Jason. The two hurried out of the library. Rain poured from dark clouds overhead. The campus seemed normal. Students walked between classes. Cars moved through nearby streets. But Professor Vex remained tense. He kept scanning the area, watching rooftops, checking windows, looking over his shoulder, as if he expected danger. Finally, Jason stopped. "Professor, what's going on?" Professor Vex looked directly at him. "That sphere contains classified knowledge that was hidden thousands of years ago." Jason blinked. "Thousands?" The professor nodded. "It was never supposed to activate." "Then why did it?" Professor Vex's silver eyes narrowed. "Because it recognized your DNA." Jason's blood ran cold. Before he could ask another question, a black SUV rolled slowly past them. Its windows were completely dark. The vehicle stopped. A moment later, the rear door opened, and someone inside was watching them. Watching Jason, Professor Vex immediately stepped in front of him. His voice became deadly serious. "They found you." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "Who found me?" Professor Vex looked toward the SUV. Then he answered with words that made everything even more terrifying. "The people who have been waiting for Commander Walker to return." Rain hammered the campus sidewalks as Jason Walker stared at the black SUV parked across the street. The vehicle hadn't moved. Its dark windows revealed nothing. Yet Jason could feel eyes watching him. Waiting. Studying. Professor Vex kept himself between Jason and the SUV. "Keep walking," he said quietly. Jason didn't argue. Something in the professor's voice told him this wasn't a normal situation anymore. The two moved quickly across campus. Behind them, the SUV slowly pulled away from the curb. Jason hoped it was leaving. Then he noticed it turning the corner and following them from a distance. His stomach tightened. "Professor!" "I know." "Who are they?" Professor Vex remained silent for several seconds. For once, Jason wasn't acting like a confused student. The professor walked toward the center of the room. Thousands of years ago, humanity was part of something much larger than Earth. Jason's pulse quickened. "The vision I saw." "Yes." "The Alliance." Professor Vex nodded. "It was real." Jason struggled to process the idea. Everything he had ever learned about history suddenly felt incomplete. One of the screens suddenly activated. A star map appeared. Hundreds of systems filled the display. Then a warning flashed across the screen. Unauthorized surveillance detected. Another warning appeared. Surface perimeter breach Professor Vex's expression darkened instantly. The custodians found us. Jason's heart pounded. Already? They've been searching for this facility for decades. The metallic crashes above grew louder. Whoever had entered the building was getting closer. Jason Walker stood at the edge of the massive opening in the classroom floor, staring into the darkness below. The shaft seemed endless. Ancient lights glowed faintly along its walls. Professor Vex stepped onto a circular platform rising from the depths. Come on. Jason hesitated for only a second before stepping beside him. The platform immediately began descending. Above them, the hidden command station slowly disappeared from view. The deeper they traveled, the older everything looked. Massive metal structures lined the shaft. Strange symbols covered the walls. Some glowed blue. Others pulsed with golden light. None of them resembled any language Jason had ever seen. Yet somehow, parts of them felt familiar, as if his mind recognized them even when he couldn't. What is this place? He asked. Professor Vex looked upward. A vault. A vault for what? The professor's silver eyes reflected the glowing symbols. For humanity's lost history. Several minutes later, the platform finally stopped. Jason stepped off and froze. An enormous underground chamber stretched before him. It was larger than a football stadium, perhaps larger than the entire campus itself. Towering columns rose toward a ceiling hidden in darkness. Thousands of glowing crystal structures filled the room. Each one contained moving images, people, cities, starships, worlds. Jason slowly walked forward. The nearest crystal activated as he approached. A holographic image appeared. His jaw dropped. It showed Earth, but not the Earth he knew. Gigantic futuristic cities covered entire continents. Massive spacecraft filled the skies. Orbital stations surrounded the planet. Humanity wasn't primitive. Humanity wasn't isolated. Humanity was advanced. Incredibly advanced. Jason stared in disbelief. This can't be real, Professor Vex answered quietly. It is. More holograms activated around them. Thousands of years of forgotten history unfolded before Jason's eyes. He saw humans traveling among the stars. He saw alien civilizations working alongside Earth. He saw scientific achievements beyond imagination. Then the images changed. Darkness spread across the galaxy. Entire worlds burned. Cities vanished. Massive fleets fought among the stars. The war Jason had witnessed in his vision. The war of the Alliance. The war that history had erased. Professor Vex stood silently beside him. Humanity nearly disappeared. Jason swallowed. Why hide all this? The professor's expression darkened. Because losing the war wasn't the greatest tragedy. Jason looked at him. What was? The betrayal. Suddenly, one of the larger crystals activated. A familiar figure appeared. Commander Walker. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The legendary commander stood before a council of alien leaders. His face looked exhausted. The war was clearly nearing its end. The holographic recording began playing. If you're seeing this, Commander Walker said, then our enemies have already found us. Jason listened carefully. The commander's eyes seemed filled with regret. We can no longer save the Alliance. The room around him fell silent. But we can save the future. The recording shifted. A map of Earth appeared. Then hundreds of hidden locations lit up across the planet. Vaults, archives, underground facilities, all concealed, all protected, waiting for someone, waiting for a descendant, waiting for Jason. Suddenly alarms erupted throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed across the ancient archive. Professor Vex immediately turned toward a nearby console. His expression became grim. They're here. Jason's heart began racing. The custodians? Professor Vex shook his head. Worse. The answer sent a chill through the chamber. Worse? The professor activated the security display. A live image appeared. Several figures were descending into the underground complex. They wore black armor unlike anything Jason had ever seen. Their eyes glowed red. Not human, not custodian. Something else entirely. Something far older. One of the figures looked directly into the camera, then smiled. A cold, terrifying smile. Professor Vex stared at the screen. For the first time since Jason had met him, the professor looked genuinely afraid. They found the archive. Jason swallowed hard. Who are they? Professor Vex slowly turned toward him. The same enemy that destroyed the Alliance thousands of years ago. At that exact moment, the chamber doors exploded inward, and the war that humanity thought had ended long ago had finally returned. The massive chamber shook as the ancient doors exploded inward. Dust and debris filled the air. Black armored figures marched through the opening. Their glowing red eyes scanned the archive. They moved with terrifying precision. Not a single step was wasted. Not a single word was spoken. Jason Walker felt his pulse racing. The enemy that had destroyed the Alliance thousands of years ago was standing only yards away. Professor Vex quickly stepped beside him. Listen carefully, he said. We may only have a few minutes. The lead invader raised a weapon and pointed it directly at Jason. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Genetic heir identified. Jason froze. The figure continued. Terminate Commander Walker's bloodline. The soldiers advance. Suddenly, the giant crystal archive behind Jason began glowing brighter than ever before. Golden energy flooded the chamber. Ancient symbols appeared across every wall. The entire facility seemed to awaken. The invading soldiers stopped. Even they appeared surprised. Professor Vex stared at the growing light. It recognizes him. Jason turned toward the archive. What recognizes me? The final protocol. Before Jason could ask another question, the crystal projected a hologram. Commander Walker appeared once again. This time, however, the recording felt different. Almost alive. The legendary commander looked directly at Jason, as though he could see him. As though he had been waiting for this exact moment. If you are watching this, Commander Walker said, then humanity's future has arrived. The chamber fell silent. Even the enemy's soldiers stopped moving. The hologram expanded. A hidden star map appeared. Thousands of locations lit up across the galaxy. Ancient Alliance facilities, secret fleets, dormant defense systems, all waiting for a command. Commander Walker spoke again. We could not win our war. His expression remained calm. But we refused to surrender the future. The map zoomed outward. More lights appeared. Then more. Then thousands more. Jason realized what he was seeing. The Alliance had never completely disappeared. It hidden itself, preserved itself, prepared for the day someone would return, prepared for him. The lead invader suddenly fired. A blast of red energy streaked toward Jason. Before it could hit him, a golden shield erupted from the archive. The attack shattered against it. The chamber filled with brilliant light. The enemy soldiers staggered backward. Professor Vex smiled. Now you understand why they fear your bloodline. Jason stared at the glowing map. Everything finally made sense. The strange visions. The hidden sphere. The classroom, the archive, none of it had been random. He had been brought here for one reason. To finish what Commander Walker had started. The archive projected a final command interface. One symbol pulsed at its center, waiting, Professor Vex looked at him. The choice is yours. Jason stepped forward. For most of his life, people had called him a failure. A student who couldn't succeed. A young man without direction. Now he understood the truth. He had never been lost. He had simply been waiting for the right path. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on the symbol. The archive responded instantly. Across the galaxy, ancient systems awakened. Hidden fleets activated. Long-dormant defense networks came online. Thousands of Alliance vessels emerged from secret locations. The enemy soldiers looked up in shock. Their war was over. Minutes later, the invaders retreated. The threat that had haunted the galaxy for thousands of years was finally broken. For the first time in ages, the future belonged to humanity again. Several weeks later, life at Westbridge Community College seemed normal. Students attended classes. Professors assigned homework. Rain still fell on the campus sidewalks. Yet Jason knew everything had changed. One afternoon, he stood outside the old stone building. Professor Vex was preparing to leave. A sleek silver ship waited nearby. "You'll be back?" Jason asked. Professor Vex smiled. "Humanity is about to rejoin the galaxy." He looked toward the stars. "I think we'll be seeing each other again." The ship lifted into the sky and vanished. Jason watched it disappear. Then he looked upward. For the first time in his life, he wasn't worried about failing, because his future was no longer limited to a college campus. It stretched across the stars. And somewhere beyond Earth, a new chapter for humanity had already begun. The end.
Welcome back, friends. I hope you watched the whole video and enjoyed a lot. Please show your love and support. For more videos, like, share, comment, subscribe and hit the bell icon button. Thank you.